The Last Dance, a story about dignity, innocence, and the courage to see what others overlook. There are moments in life that arrive quietly, without fanfare or warning. Moments that change everything, not with thunder, but with the soft touch of a small hand reaching across the distance we've built between ourselves and the world. This is one of those stories. The Riverside Country Club had stood at the edge of town for nearly 70 years. Its grand ballroom had witnessed countless celebrations, weddings that promised forever, anniversaries that proved it possible, retirement parties that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. On this particular Saturday evening in late September, the room glowed with the warm light of 3 crystal chandeliers. The autumn sun filtered through tall windows, casting long golden rectangles across the polished floor. There was something timeless about the scene, something that reminded you of an America that moved a little slower, spoke a little softer, and remembered that manners still mattered. The occasion was a charity gala, the kind of event that drew the community's established families. Women wore elegant dresses in jewel tones. Men adjusted their ties and made small talk about golf handicaps and grandchildren. A string quartet played standards from another era, Cole Porter, George Gershwin, songs that carried the weight of memory. Near the entrance to the ballroom, partially obscured by a marble column, sat William Chen. He was 62 years old, though his face suggested someone who had lived several lifetimes. Silver touched his temples, contrasting with dark hair still thick despite the years. His suit was impeccably tailored, navy blue, with a subtle pinstripe that spoke of old money and quiet taste. In his lap rested hands that had once signed million-dollar deals, that had built a commercial real estate empire spanning 3 states. Those hands now rested on the wheels of his chair. The accident had happened 3 years ago. A moment of black ice on a country road, a spin, a tree. His wife Margaret had died on impact. William had survived, but his legs had not. The surgeons had used careful words: spinal trauma, permanent mobility impairment, significant lifestyle adjustments. What they meant was simple: he would never walk again. In the time since, William had discovered something unexpected about wealth and status. They meant nothing to a wheelchair. Or rather, they meant nothing to the people who saw the wheelchair first and the man second. Tonight was no exception. He had arrived 30 minutes ago, his driver helping him through the side entrance. His donation to the Children's Hospital Fund was substantial, more than anyone else in the room. If truth be told, the organizers had thanked him profusely over the phone. In person, they'd offered nervous smiles and quickly moved on to greet others. Now he sat in his carefully chosen spot, watching the party unfold around him like a river flowing past a stone. People's eyes would land on him, register the wheelchair, then slide away. Conversations would pause as someone approached, see him there, then resume a few feet to the left or right. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was something more human and perhaps more painful: discomfort, uncertainty, the fear of saying the wrong thing. So they said nothing. William had grown accustomed to this invisibility. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself he'd come for the cause, not the socializing. He told himself a lot of things during these long evenings. A waiter passed by with champagne flutes on a silver tray. His eyes skimmed over William without pause. William adjusted his tie and looked toward the windows. Emma Rose Winters was 5 years old and 3/4, a distinction she considered very important. She had her grandfather's red hair, though hers fell in soft curls to her shoulders. Her dress was pink, not the bright artificial pink of plastic toys, but a gentle rose color that her mother had chosen carefully. A white ribbon circled her waist. On her feet were patent leather shoes that she'd been instructed, very seriously, not to scuff. She held her grandfather's hand as they entered the ballroom. James Winters was 73, a retired postal worker who still carried himself with the straight-backed bearing of a man who'd walked 20 miles a day for 4 decades. His face was weathered and kind, with smile lines that suggested a life lived with good humor. "Now remember, Emma Rose," he said gently, bending down slightly to meet her eyes. "This is a fancy party. We use our inside voices and our very best manners." "Yes, Grandpa," Emma said, though her eyes were already wide with wonder at the chandeliers, the music, the ladies in their beautiful dresses. James had been surprised to receive the invitation. He'd done some volunteer work at the hospital delivering mail to the children's ward, reading stories, making the kids laugh with his magic tricks. Someone must have added him to the guest list. He almost hadn't come. These weren't his kind of people, not really. But Emma's mother was working a double shift at the diner, and Emma had been so excited when he'd mentioned there would be music and dancing. So here they were. "Can I have some punch, Grandpa?" Emma asked, spotting a refreshment table laden with crystal bowls and silver ladles. "In a little while, sweetheart. Let's see if we can find where we're sitting first." They moved slowly through the crowd. James nodded politely to people who didn't quite meet his eye. His suit was older, from another era, carefully preserved. His shoes were shined but worn at the heels. He belonged to a different tax bracket than most people here, and everyone knew it without a word being spoken. Emma, oblivious to these adult undercurrents, simply looked around with delight. That's when she saw him, the man in the wheelchair, sitting alone by the column. Children see the world differently than adults. They haven't yet learned to look away from things that make them uncomfortable. They haven't developed the social calculus that turns human beings into categories: rich or poor, healthy or sick, worthy of attention or best ignored. Emma saw a man sitting by himself, while everyone else stood in groups, talking and laughing. This struck her as wrong in a way her 5-year-old heart couldn't articulate but felt deeply. She tugged on her grandfather's hand. "Grandpa, why is that man all alone?" James followed her gaze and saw William for the first time. He felt a pang of recognition, another outsider, though their circumstances were vastly different. "I don't know, honey. Maybe he prefers it that way." "He looks sad," Emma said with the blunt honesty of childhood. Before James could respond, the string quartet began a new song. It was a waltz, slow and old-fashioned. Several couples moved toward the dance floor, and Emma's eyes lit up. "Grandpa, will you dance with me?" "You promised." James smiled. "I did promise. But just one dance. These old bones aren't what they used to be." He led her toward the dance floor, and they joined the other couples. James held Emma's small hands and guided her through a simplified version of the waltz. She stood on his shoes, laughing, as he turned them gently in small circles. From his position by the column, William watched them, the old man and the little girl. Something in his chest tightened, a memory of dancing with his own daughter at her wedding. 5 years before the accident, the joy in her face, the privilege of being the first man to dance with her on that day. He looked away. When the song ended, Emma applauded enthusiastically. James bowed with exaggerated formality, making her giggle. "Can we dance again?" she asked. "Let Grandpa catch his breath, sweetheart. Maybe you could dance with someone else." Emma looked around the room at the tall, intimidating adults. Then her eyes found William again. Before James could stop her, she was walking toward him. William didn't notice Emma approaching until she was standing directly in front of him. He blinked, surprised. Children usually gave him an even wider berth than adults. "Hello," Emma said with the directness of the very young. "Hello," William replied, his voice rusty from disuse. "My name is Emma Rose Winters. I'm 5 3/4 years old. What's your name?" A smile tugged at the corner of William's mouth, the first genuine expression that had crossed his face all evening. "I'm William Chen. It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma Rose." "That's a nice name," she said seriously. Then, without preamble, "Would you like to dance with me?" The request hung in the air between them. William's smile faded. He glanced down at his wheelchair, then back at Emma's expectant face. She was looking at him, truly looking at him, without a trace of pity or discomfort, just an open invitation. "Emma," he said gently, "I'm afraid I can't dance. I can't walk, you see." Emma tilted her head, considering this. "But you can move your arms, right?" "Yes." "Then you can dance. You just dance differently." The simplicity of it struck William like a bell. "You just dance differently." Behind Emma, James had caught up, slightly out of breath. "I'm so sorry, sir." "Emma, come away now." "No, it's—" William held up a hand. "It's quite all right." He looked at Emma again. This little girl with the red curls and the pink dress and the absolute certainty that he could dance. When was the last time someone had looked at him like this? Not with sympathy or discomfort, but with simple, uncomplicated acceptance. "You know what, Emma Rose?" William said, his voice suddenly thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. "I would be honored to dance with you." Emma beamed. William positioned his wheelchair to face her properly. The string quartet had begun another waltz, something slow and sweet. "May I have this dance?" he asked formally, extending his hands. Emma placed her small hands in his. William was struck by how tiny they were, how much trust it took for her to reach out like this. They began to move. William couldn't stand, couldn't sweep her across the floor in grand circles, but he could hold her hands and guide her through simple steps. While his upper body swayed gently to the music, Emma followed his lead, stepping forward and back side to side, her face shining with delight. Around them, conversations began to falter. People turned to look, the millionaire in the wheelchair and the 5-year-old girl with red curls, dancing. There was something about the scene that silenced the room, not with shock or pity, but with recognition. This was what they'd all forgotten somewhere along the way. The simple courage to reach out, the grace to see past what makes us different to what makes us human. James Winters stood watching, his hand over his heart. One of the society women near the dance floor felt tears prick her eyes. Though she couldn't have explained exactly why, the song continued and William and Emma moved together in their own unique way. He was smiling now, really. Smiling for the first time in longer than he could remember. "You're a wonderful dancer," Emma said seriously. "So are you," William replied, his voice catching slightly. "See, I told you that you could dance. You were right. I just needed the right partner." When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. Not the polite, scattered clapping of social obligation, but genuine, spontaneous appreciation. Emma curtsied, delighted by the attention. William nodded his acknowledgement, feeling something shift inside his chest, a door opening that he'd thought sealed permanently shut. "Thank you, Emma Rose," he said quietly. "You've given me a gift tonight." "You're welcome," she said, then added with cheerful pragmatism, "Now I'm going to get some punch." She skipped back to her grandfather, leaving William sitting there, his hands still warm from holding hers. James approached, extending his hand. "That was a beautiful thing you did for her, Mr. Chen." William shook his hand. "I think she did it for me, actually." They shared a look of understanding. Two men from very different worlds, connected by the wisdom that comes from living long enough to know what matters. "Would you like to join us for some refreshments?" James asked. "I have a feeling Emma would enjoy your company." William realized with some surprise that he would enjoy their company too. "I'd like that very much." The rest of the evening passed differently than William had expected. He sat with James and Emma at one of the tables, talking and laughing. Other people began to approach, tentatively at first, then more easily. The wheelchair was still there, unchanged, but somehow it no longer seemed like a barrier. Emma told him about her kindergarten class, about her cat named Whiskers, about how she wanted to be a dancer when she grew up. William listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making her giggle with his observations. When it was time to leave, Emma gave him a hug. "Will you come to my dance recital in December?" she asked. "I'm going to be a snowflake." William felt his eyes mist. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." As James and Emma left, James turned back once at the door. He caught William's eye and nodded, one outsider to another, one survivor to another, one grateful human being to another. William nodded back. Later that night, alone in his large empty house, William sat by the window looking out at the darkness. The evening played back in his memory, not just the dance, but everything that had followed. The conversations, the laughter, the feeling of being seen. One small girl had asked him to dance. That's all it had taken. She hadn't seen his money or his loss or his limitations. She'd seen a person sitting alone who might want to join in the joy. And in her simple, uncomplicated kindness, she'd reminded him of something he'd forgotten. He was still here, still capable of connection, still able to move through the world, just differently than before. Margaret would have loved Emma Rose, he thought. She would have loved this whole impossible perfect evening. For the first time since the accident, William felt something like hope. Not the grand, dramatic hope of miracles and transformations. Just the quiet, steady hope that comes from knowing that life continues, that beauty persists, that kindness still exists in the most unexpected forms, that sometimes when you least expect it, a small hand reaches out in the darkness, and if you're brave enough to take it, everything can change. Thank you so much for listening to this story today. If it touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories about kindness, hope, and the beautiful moments that remind us of our shared humanity. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a simple act of kindness that changed your perspective? Your stories matter, and I read every comment. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.